like, imagine that it's 2030, so let's say 70 years from now. Do you believe that there will be two AIs? One AI by the company is sending that AI to interview a candidate, and the candidate is actually not coming there by themselves, but they will send their own AI, and then there will be actually one AI interviewing another AI, and based on that interview, a hiring decision is made. Do you think it will go there?
No, I don't actually, because I think the reason also why both candidates and recruiters are holding on so tightly to the interview and why it's such a big like issue with using tests and so forth is that people like the social interaction that comes with recruitment. And so I think from both a candidate point of view, but also a recruiter and a hiring manager point of view, I don't think we're going to let go of all the human interaction and all the social interactions. But I think we're going to use AI much more, especially as recruiters and hiring managers. We're going to get help with AI, and we're going to get lots of help. And I guess also candidates are going to prepare by using AI.
Yeah. You mentioned the interactive part over there. Do you think it's because people want to meet their future colleagues, or like what do you think will be the main reasoning why people want to have a real conversation with other real people?
I think so. I mean, talking to candidates and when you speak to them and you ask them about their part, we know that their choice is and should be subjective. We're always talking about how you need to be more objective when making your decisions in recruitment. So, hiring manager and organizations and recruiters and talent acquisition, they need to be more objective. But the candidates are never going to be 100% objective because they want to choose their employer. They want to choose their future manager. They want to sort of, get a feel of the culture and the vibe at the office and meet the team and see. I think that's going to factor in their decision a lot more than it should factor in with the hiring managers and the recruiters. And so I think that's the reason why it's so hard. And also because there's also this feeling that you're in control when you're representing yourself. So I know it feels like a big step to let go of control, like using tests and using assessments and being more data driven from a candidate point of view, because it feels like you don't really own your own narrative. So it's really hard to lose that control and let go. And so the meeting and the interview where you get to present yourself, where you take back some of the control and the recruitment process, I think that's an important factor for candidates.
Yeah, but I think we have here actually a bigger topic, like not only the future of talent acquisition or not future of recruitment, but also like future of work in a way. Because now when we are talking about those things about culture or leadership or everything like that, we can assume that, let's say in 10 years, we are still working with other people. We still have a manager, we still have colleagues, we still have a culture. But I think it's interesting actually. I've been reading some articles about like, will AI replace leadership? For example, like in the future, do we still have leaders as another other human beings? And then kind of if over there we would end up in a situation that actually AI is leading people in their work, let's say AI works both on kind of going through your goals, and then AI could also have the discussion around feelings, emotions, what is pissing you off at the moment in the work. Kind of if we go to that direction, then we kind of, I think then we don't need the fact of kind of meeting our supervisor in an interview. Maybe then we
Yeah.
want to meet the AI supervisor. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I think maybe in the future we can have more like AI functions supervising to sort of giving you feedback on where you are in comparison to your goals or where you should be, and following up on your task and so on. But I think where the leadership plays a big factor and where it plays a big role is also the social part and having someone to support you, to boost you, to lift you, to see you, to give you credit. Because one of the biggest like needs as a human being is being seen and being like confirmed by others. And I think having a leader that sees your performance and giving you feedback and both constructive feedback but also positive feedback. I think that's such a huge factor for employees. And I think that I don't think we're going to stop using managers or having completely leaderless teams, because of course there's always differences in how individuals need to be led and want to be led, but some need a leader and they actually get motivated by having a good leader. So I don't think we're going to see completely leaderless teams, but I think it's going to change. So I think a lot of the manager tasks will change, and they're going to automate a lot of their tasks to maybe AI and other data driven methods, but not completely. Instead, it's going to be more the interpersonal value creating aspect that's going to be so much more important for both HR but also for managers.
Mm, that makes sense. And I do believe that people need leaders. I actually have a great story from yesterday. I think this is actually quite kind of big failure that we
Yeah.
have done in Talent B. We had a discussion yesterday with my co-founder. So we are three founders. Uh, Officially on the paper, I'm the CEO of the business, but we
Hmm.
all three we own exactly the same amount of
Yeah.
shares of Talent B and so forth. And we had discussion yesterday regarding kind of leadership, and it was very eye-opening because for me, like, I don't see myself as leaders of those two people. I see them more as colleagues, my co-founders being on the same level. But when I ask them, they see me as their leader because I'm the
Yeah.
CEO and I have the big picture of the business. And that was very interesting discussion about, like, do all people need leaders? And for example, they felt like they need. And I just, after the conversation yesterday, I made sure that I booked like one-to-one discussion with them on kind of weekly basis to go through things with them. Kind of in the past we've done it only as a kind of group. But
Hmm.
then an interesting question is as well, like, does CEO need a leader? I think yes.
Yeah.
At some point, you most likely have a board, but for example, at this point, like, we don't have a board, so I'm thinking, like, who should be my leader? What do you think of that?
Interesting. And maybe it's not the fact that you need a leader or a manager, but you might need a mentor or someone to just like discuss ideas with and get support from. And it doesn't have to be someone that necessarily on paper is a manager or a leader per se, but just someone that you can bounce off ideas off, you know? And I can just sort of relate this to being a psychologist, because I mean, even psychologists have their psychologists. So they go see another therapist to discuss maybe their patients and not use the actual information, but talk about what they're going through, because you need someone to talk to. You need support on your own. So you're never just the person at the top and then there's no one else, because there are people on another level. And it doesn't have to be someone in Talent B, for example. It can be someone outside, having maybe someone that's an investor in Talent B, that's your mentor, or maybe find another CEO on another company in a startup that's similar to yours, and you can just talk to each other and support each other in your similar roles. And I think that's really important, because it can get very lonely otherwise, being a CEO, if you don't have anyone to turn to.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And in that way, like, if we look at it from kind of mentorship point of view, I do have mentors and we do have a kind of advisory board that is
Yeah.
helping us. But I think there's the kind of limit of kind of official leader and then kind of something
Yeah.
else with a kind of similar structure. But yeah, that's interesting. But hey, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the maybe the AI and recruitment
Back to
part a
AI.
bit. And I think kind of we could talk a bit more about the interviews part, because
Mhm.
I think this is interesting, like interviews, database decision making, feeling based decision making, how to utilize maybe AI over there. And maybe once again, just give a story or kind of background. I think this very similar situation to a lot of founders out there. But we are, for example, right now hiring a recruiter to our team.
Mhm.
And in the past few weeks, we've been interviewing a lot of people. We have had, I would say, somewhat structured way of doing that one. But
Good.
still, in the end, I'm in a situation that damn, all of these people are good. Now I need to make the decision. And how do I make the decision? Do I make it based on my feeling? I'm a big fan of, scorecards and like giving points on different things and then just looking at the numbers
Yeah.
basically.
Good.
But I think that brings some problems as well. And then I was thinking, like, should I actually like have the transcript of the meetings or the notes from the meetings and push those ones, let's say, to ChatGPT and share our top 5 priorities for this role, and then ask that one to make the hiring decision for us? Like, how do you think that the hiring decision should be made? Can you make it completely based on data, or what do you think?
I don't think we can make it completely on data. I think we can make it more data driven by using structure, by using data driven tools, such as using like selection questions early on instead of having a cover letter. Or instead of having like a phone interview that tries to measure those things that we try to get in a cover letter or in a first conversation that's not structured. Using psychometric tests to measure personality and your problem solving skill is one of the best methods you can use early on to be more objective and also gather more relevant information. And then the interview is such a central part. And not only because we've been using it for so long, but also because a lot of processes have not only one interview, they have 2, 3, some have up to 5 or even 7 interviews, meaning it's so much data collected and there are so many subjective factors. Like this is the most biased feature in our recruitment process. You have your CV screening, which is really biased because you can look at their name, you can look at their picture, you can see if you have the similar university, you have some people writing their interest and stuff, and that's really biased. But then you have the interview, which is the most biased feature actually. So if you don't have it structured, you will base your decision on gut feeling and you will leave the interview going yay or nay and not having data to answer, okay, why yay or nay? So how have you actually assessed this person? What data did you base your assessment on? And that's where the transcript is really helpful because you have your data there. So now with the technical solutions that AI brings you and that what we have tried to incorporate in the Asker platform is that we don't want you to take notes. And this is for 2 reasons. One is that you gather better information. You don't miss out on any details because we know when you take notes, you stop listening because you can't do both at the same time. Even if you're a super multitasker, it's really hard. And so that's one reason to gather better information and have better data, but also because you can actually be more human driven. You can be more present and actually listen and talk to your candidate. You can use your active listening techniques and you can really be present during the talk and then lean on your transcript to actually have the assessments afterwards. And as you said, you could use the transcript and send it to ChatGPT and see, okay, so how would you rate this question? Based on this question and the candidate's answer, what score would you give them? And actually have AI help you. But so right now, we don't really know how we should use AI to make the decision for us because there's an ethic point of view. We don't know how biased OpenAI or ChatGPT is at this point. We can assume that it's less biased than us humans, but we don't know for a fact. So you can sort of have it as a tool and help you gather the information and then have a structured way of assessing the transcript. And you can also ask like a colleague to go through the same transcript, and then you have this inter-assessor reliability to see, did we score the same way? Did we interpret the answer the same way? And you can also add maybe ChatGPT as your number 3 assessor and see, okay, so did ChatGPT score the same way that I did? And so you can get support in your decision making. But
Yeah.
that's how we want us. I mean, we want us to be more data driven and be more accurate in our decision making, but we also know it's really complex to be 100% objective. And I especially think this is hard when you're a small company. So when you're hiring someone, when we are hiring someone now, right now we're 6 people that are employed in Asker and we have consultants as well. But in this type of small company, we know that chemistry and getting along with people actually matters in this early stage. And so I think it's harder to not let the like the personal chemistry between people actually have some sort of factor in, because you're going to work so closely together. And that doesn't mean you should base your decision on your gut feeling and your feelings alone, and it shouldn't even be prioritized. But I think it's more common to let it factor in than if you're a bigger organization or a bigger team. The
Mm.
bigger you get as a company, the more you should really throw your gut feeling away and like leave it outside. It shouldn't even matter for 1%. But I think it's hard. It's
It
complex
is.
to hire someone.
It is. It is. Yeah, I can totally relate to the small team part. I think like even though there would be a person with perfect skill set, but if I don't feel like this person is fun to work with, nice to work with, like I couldn't have someone like that on our team, especially in this moment
Hard.
when we are small. But I started to think like now when talking about interviews, like interview is a skill. You know, as a recruiter, it is a skill to ask the right questions, right
Mhm.
tonality, all that. But then on the other hand, kind of being interviewed is also a skill. You can get very good at that one. And for
100%.
example, I think kind of if you are kind of fluent in a way of speaking and you are good at sharing stories, you are good with sharing, clear frameworks and all that, I think it's quite easy to be good at interviews. I think, for example, for me, like I think I've I think have I always almost always when I've been kind of interviewed for a role in my past, like I've always got the role, like almost. And I think I'm good in interviews, but then I always think like, is there a kind of correlation between being good at interview and being good at the job? And let's say if we go more to the data driven one, ChatGPT, and then people learn what you need to say in order to get full points on a question. And I
Yeah.
think the more we go to structure interviews, the more we are actually going to that direction as well. And then I think it's quite easy to, let's say if I have a job ad here that says like, hey, these skills are mentioned, and then on the interview I just make sure that I repeat those words a lot of times. So then basically when I push the transcript to a colleague or ChatGPT, I will get a lot of points from there.
Yeah. And I think this is something, this is really important to remind ourselves in, because as you say, it's a skill. It's a skill that you can practice and get better on. And the thing is, as interviewers, we know that we have learned better techniques, better methods to be better at the interview. I would say most people are still not that great at doing the correct interview, but okay, let's say we are. The candidates have been training as well. I mean, if you Google how to answer these interview questions, you will get like a million hits. So, parallel to us getting better at the interview, the candidates are getting better at answering your questions, meaning they have trained, they know how to answer the worst possible interview question. They have also trained in how to answer the best possible interview question. And so they're training their skill into how to form a better answer to describe how you're working with other people in your team. They have learned how to describe they handle projects or handle deadlines or how they communicate with others. So they are getting better and better. And so this is always a challenge. As they get better, it's harder for us to actually make a correct assessment as well. But that's also why it's so important for you in the recruitment process to add different steps. Because as you started off by talking about, like, okay, some people are better in the interview situation. I mean, people who are more extroverted, more positive, and they give a better first impression. And if you give a better first impression, you're more likely to get better scoring on your interview. That's just the way the world goes. And also, I would say also using your problem solving skill to easily sort of figure out what the interviewer is asking for, having that deduction and like deduction reasoning is going to help you also give better answers. So the interview isn't really fair game. It's not an equal method to assess different candidates. Some people will do better even though they're not better fitted or more have a higher match for the actual task to perform. But it's the same with psychometric tests. Some people get more nervous when taking tests, meaning it's going to affect how they take the test. Some people don't really know how to write a good CV, and so on. So no individual step is equal for all candidates. And that's why it's also so important to add as many objective and accurate steps as possible to gather more data from different aspects. So first you have your assessments to gather data in an objective way, and then you use your interview to gather more information about someone's personality, their skills, their experience, to build up your final assessment on someone's total competency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot like you mentioned there regarding gathering data and like how much you should be actually gathering that one. At the same time, I do believe that the more data you have, the better hiring decisions you can make.
Yeah.
But still, at the same time, I believe like within a few interviews or CV or task, like you cannot collect all data that can directly show like this person will
Yeah.
either succeed or fail in the role. So I actually think that the best way to kind of really see it down is to see the person in action and actually work
Yeah.
for a while. And I've seen some kind of interesting examples of this one. Actually, one company that I heard of, they have actually very simple like hiring process. It was basically like they have one interview, and if they feel like they're a fit, they work together for 3 days.
Mm.
They pay for those 3 days of working, of course, but like after working for 3 days, like you see like basically all the good, all the bad, both from the company side and from the kind of person side, because like
Yeah.
1 hour interview is still like quite easy to fake and show only the best
Mm-hmm.
parts. So I think that was interesting. But at the same time, I feel like for super senior roles, for example, one of our customers just hired a senior developer, and it was basically like one interview and then offer. And kind of what they scared over there was like that person was in such a high demand, such a high experience that kind of if you run too long interview process or too many tasks, that they will drop off from the process. So
Mm-hmm.
they thought that it makes more sense to basically take a big or bit bigger risk in hiring, but
Yeah.
then kind of identify the fact that yeah, we are taking a risk here, but then kind of at the same time, like what the worst thing that can happen is basically like after working for a while, we notice that this person is not a fit, and that's why there is a probational period, basically.
Yeah, and I get that in theory. It's just that worst case is not, I mean, worst case is not, it doesn't work out. Worst case
Mm.
is it doesn't work out, and it actually hurts your employer brand, and it hurts your brand in general as well, for customers and for future partnerships and so on. Because I get like the work sample test is the actual, that's the best feature to have in your recruitment processes, but not many can have that because it's time consuming and it's not cost effective.
Mm.
However, 3 days, I mean, you can do an assessment in 3 days, but it's not really fair because some people are really like have like a high learning curve, and they learn things really quickly and they adapt really quickly and they jump on new things, and they have like this really like outgoing personality. So 3 days is enough for them to really show some worth. And other people are more like slow starters, but this
Mm.
doesn't really say anything on how they perform after a sort of longer onboarding time. So maybe if you had given them 3 weeks or 3 months, the one that was a slow starter might even become better. Because
Mm.
in 3 days you still have much of this chemistry, so much of this first impression, and so much of how someone is a good starter but maybe not a good finisher. And so
Mm.
I would say it's a nice add-on, but I wouldn't recommend just an interview and then just 3 days. I think you
Mm.
might need more time to give a fair process to each candidate, and also to give a fair judgment on who's going to be the most suitable long term.
Yeah, yeah. I think fair assessment is a nice idea, but it's not
Yeah,
reality.
it's not.
Like any process, it is kind of better for someone else than it is for others. And I think as a kind of As an idea, I think it's good to keep in mind, like, how
Yeah.
do I make sure that my recruitment process is something that works for a lot of people and you can make like fair decisions, but then at
Yeah.
the same time, like, I think you never can kind of get there, but it's good to
No.
good to keep in mind
You
as
can
a
never be
as a
100%
goal.
objective, and you can never be 100% accurate. And that's the thing. Like here in Sweden, we have this phrase where we call it biased free recruitment processes. I don't know if you have the same in Finland, but yeah, that's how we call it. And I'm really allergic to this term because it's not possible. It's like
Mm,
it's the ideal, absolutely, that we want to aspire being biased free, but we're not. Not even our tools are biased free. So it's better to be aware of your bias and work from there and aspire to be as objective as possible, as data driven as possible. And that's why you should use an evidence based process in your recruitment process, because that means when there is research, when you have support from research, and you have validated methods and validated tools, those are the ones you should start off with. But then we don't have anything that gives us a one-to-one accurate decision. So we need to add more steps, and we need to tailor make also our recruitment process based on the position, based on how the candidates react. It's such a complex situation. And even if we have
yeah,
really good tools to measure someone's performance, that's great, but we can only say so much. We can say, okay, so this is how likely you will perform well on these tasks. But it
mm,
doesn't say anything on how you're going to interact with the team, how much a good or a bad leader or culture will affect you. Or say you start working for 6 months and then you have something happen in your personal life that might affect you. So we're never going to have all the information on who's the perfect match, on who's the right match. We can only say this or that person has a more likelihood of performing well based on the profile that we require. That's all we can say. So it's never going to be
yeah,
100% objective and never 100% fair and never 100% accurate. But we can increase the objectivity and we can increase the accuracy. And I think
mm,
that's the most important thing to aspire.
yeah. I agree. And I think one big change that is happening in the recruitment industry, I think it has happened a lot, especially on the harder roles. But I think for a lot of companies still, if we look at the recruitment process, it is
Mm.
basically built around validation of the candidate skill set and culture and all that.
Yeah.
But a thing that a lot of companies still don't figure out is that actually, especially for harder roles, you should also figure out what the candidate needs, how you are selling the
Yes.
company, how you are selling the role, how you are selling the opportunity. And I think there's still a lot of this kind of old way of doing that. You have like 1 hour of talk and it's only questions, questions, questions to the candidate, like really hard question, a lot of pressure and all that. Whereas if you want to get the best candidates interested, you actually need to, yeah, be selling the opportunity, figure out what the candidates want. And I
Yeah.
think, for example, if I think about our recruitment process, I look at it from two parts. There are the things that kind of I demand that there is in the recruitment process. Like these are the things that I need to validate, and here are the ways that we are doing that one. But then always like asking candidates if they actually want to add some extra steps. I think
Yeah.
when we hired our COO last spring, we got like 9 or 10 different steps. 4 of them were ones that I required, but the rest were
Hmm.
actually stuff that he required. So, having a separate call regarding our numbers, how our numbers are looking currently,
Mm.
having a separate call regarding our customers, who are we working with, are they happy, what kind of things they're buying from us, have a separate call about our strategy and our goals for the future.
Yeah.
Actually, the interview process isn't only about like what I care about, but what the
No.
kind of person on the other side care about. And I think that's a very interesting part to see how that one will be kind of shaping the recruitment industry in the future.
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting part because I think a lot of companies have realized that it's not like it was traditionally that we choose our employees, or the employees choose their employer. And it's a two-way street. So we choose them, they choose us. And I think everybody has sort of got that now because everybody is talking about candidate experience. Okay, it hasn't missed anyone really. But it's one thing to talk about candidate experience. It's another thing to really see it through. And I think this is such an important step to really factor in. And it's really interesting because, like, when it comes to the interview, we know that 46% of candidates have actually turned down a job due to a bad interview experience. And so it really hurts your employer brand, and also it really hurts your team. It hurts everything in your organization to not really see all the steps through as how they affect the candidate experience. And I think we need to work more on that in order for us to improve. The one thing I would change, though, or not change, but just one thing I think about when you say you have 4 steps and the candidate wants to add steps. I think that's super important. I just think we need to make sure that we have made our decision first, so that we don't get charmed by someone. Oh, I want to look at numbers and customers. And you go, wow, that's super smart. I like that candidate for asking those questions, because we don't want their questions to factor in on our decision. And we want to get wowed by them maybe Googling on what to ask, and someone has trained to be a better candidate in that way. If you do see what I'm saying, like we need to
Yeah,
separate our decision making to their decision making.
I see. I see what you mean, but I actually disagree with this a bit. And let me
Okay,
explain.
tell me. Yeah.
Uh, of course, depends on the industry and so forth. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I think for us, especially in the COO role, uh, I was looking for a person who can challenge me a lot, who can ask the
mm-hmm,
hard questions
mm-hmm,
and ask the questions that I haven't realized asking from myself.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
actually, in a way, that was kind of part of the validation in a way. Like
Yeah.
I think I would never hire Jesse if he wouldn't be asking those hard questions from me, because that was something I was kind of looking for. So in the same time, even though it was stuff that he wanted, at kind of simultaneously was around validation, if I can say it
Yeah.
that way. Maybe I can.
And I get it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it won't be fair. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying that the information he gave you doing that was irrelevant. That added data to your decision making, but it's not a fair opportunity.
Mm,
And that's the thing, because someone is going to prepare, unless you actually wrote that in your advertisement, that you write, I'm looking for someone to challenge me to do this and that. If you have wrote that, then someone can prepare on how to challenge you actually in the recruitment process. But otherwise, it's hidden requirements that you know
mm,
in your heart and in your mind, but that you haven't been transparent with different candidates. And
mm,
as we talked about earlier, it's different when you're a startup. It's different when you're recruiting for these like C-level positions, because it's a bit different. But I just want everyone to be aware that everything we do and everything the candidate does affects us in our subjective manner. And we just
totally.
need to be aware that everything that's not decided on beforehand won't be fair. Every step outside of the recruitment process that we haven't made a decision on beforehand is gonna
Mm,
make us more biased or more prone to be biased, and it will affect us either consciously or subconsciously. And
yeah.
so sometimes it works out great, but we just need to be aware to not, you know, be too wide in how we change our recruitment process based on the candidate. And so
Mm,
just sort of have that in the back of your mind, that when a candidate alters the recruitment process, we also alter how it's equal to all candidates.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I believe there's like a lot of bias on recruitment. I think I have a lot of that one.
We all
When
do.
when I interview for our latest recruitment that we are currently running, like I notice it straight away. Like it's a weird feeling when you can kind of identify that one. Like why I'm saying no to this person. Like, oh, is it
Mm,
because they are not living in Finland, or is it because they don't have similar background to
yeah.
mine, or is it that they don't have a LinkedIn profile picture, or like whatever it is. But I think like everyone does have biases, and you are at the same time looking for something similar to you. But it's actually interesting because like I think like I want to build a very kind of diverse team here in Talent B.
Mhm.
And for example, now the latest hiring we are doing, I noticed that in a weird feeling, like I don't like that person. And what I mean, I really like the skill set, but he's very different
Yeah.
person from me. So
Yeah.
it's like interesting. I don't have this, that I have with some candidates. Like I'm like already in love with this person. Like, oh yeah, perfect fit, perfect fit. Exactly like that. But he's very different. So
It
I
is.
kind of like like that one.
I mean, and it's so easy to understand. I mean, why would you not want to hire people that make you instantly like fall in love with them and click with them? I mean, you want to hang out with them all the time, and you spend like 8 hours a day in your work. If you're a CEO or a founder, you spend even more hours working, meaning you 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 will want to hire those people. Like, oh my God, we're gonna have so much fun at lunch. It won't be even hard to work late nights because we're gonna have so much fun on the way. It's not that it's not important. It's just that it sometimes it stands in the way of actually hiring the right skill set, because it we as human beings are going to be more biased to hire the ones we like and maybe not the ones who have what we actually need long term. So it tricks
Mm,
us into hiring sometimes. I mean, not someone that's gonna fail, but it might be in the way of us hiring the one that has the better skill set for us. And it's
yeah.
tricky. It's super super tricky. I've done this myself. I've been training other people working with strategic HR and having a data driven method for like 7 years. It's still super hard. I've been talking about this like every day for the past 6 years. And last year, when I was interim chief for our or team leader for our team, I was supposed to recruit new members, and instantly recruiting for my own team made it impossible for me to be objective. And I have never, ever been so aware of how biased I was. And since I was so aware, it also took a lot of my energy trying to push my bias away, meaning I wasn't really present into interview because I was like, okay, am I reacting to the question, the answer, or am I reacting to other information? And it was so much in my head that it actually made me a worse recruiter and a worse interviewer because I was so aware that it got in the way. So sometimes, like, even if you know so much, even if you have the right training, you know exactly what to be aware of, it still gets in your way. And that's why it's
Mm,
so important to understand that now, no matter how competent or how skill trained you are in being unbiased and being objective and being a good interviewer, it's still super hard because you're not your skill first, you're your human brain. Your system one is always going to try to trump your system two. So you're always going to be biased. And it takes so much energy focusing on not to be biased, meaning I still stop listening because I'm focusing more on like pushing away my own bias. So it's super hard. And so you need as much help as you can get using better methods, even though they might feel like you're not really comfortable using tests, you're not comfortable using different kind of interview questions and so forth and using AI, but we have to do it. And I understand it's hard because it's been such a been such an instrumental and such a big change, a drastic change in our generation, this digital innovation rate that we have right now. I mean, no other generational change has gone this fast. The industrial revolution took like 100 years. The agricultural revolution took like millennials. And now we have the digital revolution that has taken only decades. So, of course, both recruiters and candidates are overwhelmed. It's super hard to change. It's super hard to adapt to this digital change and accept the tools that we should use, but we have to accept it and we have to take the first steps to these changes and maybe find a
mm.
good balance on how to use data driven methods, but how to keep the value driven interpersonal parts as well and not lose that aspect because it is important. So we shouldn't just say, no, no, be data driven and exclude everything else. Like, use both parts because it is important, but find a way to do it as accurate and as fair as possible because there are ways to do that.
They are. If we go back to the beginning, so AI
Yeah.
and interviews, and I now when thinking about these discussions and will AI take over and will AI take over recruitments, I think that I ended up in a conclusion that
Mm-hmm.
AI won't replace recruiters, but will
Yeah.
replace recruiters that don't. Do you agree?
Hopefully is my answer, because I hope so. Because I mean, that's the change that has been too slow, so forth. Until this day, we still have the majority of recruiters and companies still don't use the methods they should use in a specific order. They still don't use structured interviews. So I hope that recruiters using evidence-based methods and using AI to support them will replace the recruiters not, because that means you're doing it incorrectly. You're doing it based on your gut feeling and your tradition and your experience and not on evidence. So I hope so, and I think so also, but maybe not as quickly as we would hope, but in the future, yes, 100%.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you got a lot of good ideas about SaaS talent acquisition. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to share it on your social so others can hear it too. And if you have a topic in mind that you would like me to cover in this podcast, share it with me as well. I'm Samuli, CEO and co-founder in Talentbee, where we help fast-growing SaaS companies in their talent acquisition. Make sure to follow us, make sure to follow this podcast, and have an awesome week. Bye-bye.